Hello. My talk today is titled, Where the Map Comes From. I've spoken before about how maps only come into existence by and through decisions made by the reader that transfigure an artifact into one of those meaning-bearing things that we call maps. It is the transfiguration of the artifact that allows us to ascribe meaning to it and allows us to read specific meanings into it. This model is one well known and well explored in conceptual art, where it has been fruitful of significant insights. The veracity and utility of such a model is also borne out, as I outlined in Montreal, by the psychedelic critique, and it is likewise supported by thoughtful readings of postmodernist thought. Someone once said to me that my model of the map leaves no place for the map, almost as if I was saying that maps did not exist. But no, I'm not saying that. Clearly, maps exist, but they do not exist for everyone, nor do they exist in the same way for every map reader. And this is key. Any map exists only as a conceptual construct that is applied to an object or composition. This means that a map is a map only for particular persons in particular places at particular times. Thus, a map is a map in exactly the same way and through exactly the same mechanisms that an artwork is a work of art. And this can be explored through exactly the same sort of conceptual analysis as lies at the heart of conceptual art. This assertion may be puzzling or annoying if you're unfamiliar with conceptual art, but if it annoys you, dear listener, then the fault lies not with the assertion, but rather in yourselves. Only relatively recently have we seen writers recognizing that there's more to a map than what is on the paper, but no one has effectively engaged maps at this level. For example, Rob Kitchen and Martin Dodge were correct, if a bit limited, when they wrote that maps come into being through embodied social and technical processes. However, they prefaced that recognition with the hysterical cry that maps are not stable entities but processes. This faulty assumption that something not fixed is therefore unstable effectively puts their conclusions up on the rocks. Kitchen and Dodge are not the only ones. Dennis Wood, Matthew Edney, and John Pickles are just a few of the well-respected writers who never face the facts that maps can be unfixed without being unstable. In fact, however, mutable, unfixed things can indeed have stable ontologies. Key to this is our understanding of stability. Now, there are two types of stability, initial and dynamic. A broad, flat-bottomed boat has a great deal of initial stability. One can stand up and walk around in it, and in still water it seems as steady as a rock. A boat with a rounder bottom can be quite tender or tippy, and it can rock from side to side anytime you move. In a seaway, however, a flat-bottomed boat, or God forbid a catamaran, can flip over like a switch, while the rounder boat with greater dynamic stability rides the waves safely. Now, there are a tremendous range of elements and aspects that intersect in the criteria each map reader uses to decide if a thing is a map thing. Almost all of the criteria, though, are particular and contingent. That is, they apply in some situations, for some people, at some given time. But there's one element that is always present, always pertinent, and always applicable. And that is the need or desire to convince or to be convinced. This is the rhetorical imperative, and it is the dynamically stable ontological core of the map. It is why each and every map exists. And as an ontology for the map, the rhetoric is stable. Even when variables of who, what, when, where, why, and how are considered, because rhetoric is a discipline without particular subject matter. This means that the persuasive map communication can take any suitable or appropriate form to meet the need at hand, while its manifestation as an artifact is governed by decisions made by its maker. Its transfiguration into a map is up to whoever has decided to be its reader. The maker makes a thing, but the reader decides what that thing is. To understand this properly, one must be able to intellectually divide the map from the artifact. The two are not identical. A map is an active experience, an abstract conceptual state of being, while the artifact is a physical object. A map artifact must have features that indicate a certain potential, but artifacts are not maps. The artifact's potential can only be discovered or recognized by some person of special abilities, an adept who has learned to seek out, to find and recognize the the artifact's potential can only be recognized by some person of special abilities, an adept who has received the correct training, a training that has passed down from the elders for generation after generation. Only such an adept, such a one who has learned to seek out, to find and recognize the stigmata of mapicity in an object, only a map reader can transfigure the random lump of matter into the fabulous repository of meaning we call a map. This transfiguration, as John Dewey pointed out, is the beginning of a complex interaction, and upon the nature of this interaction depends the character of the thing as it is finally experienced. For nothing, he wrote, enters experience bald and unaccompanied, whether it is a seemingly formless happening, a theme intellectually systematized, or an object elaborated with every loving care of united thought and emotion. This applies to both the conceptual works we call art and to the conceptual works we call maps. Dividing the map from the artifact comes down to differentiating a map's whatness from its thingness. Aristotle wrote that substances in the world are made up of form and matter, complementary features of reality that can be distinguished only in thought. A form, according to Aristotle, is a thing's essence or nature and is related to the thing's function, what it is. An object's matter, by contrast, is what is unique to that particular object. Matter is what makes individual things different, even things with the same essence. The mappiness of a map is associated with its form. It is made up of the ontological kernel of the rhetorical imperative and the essence I have called mapicity. The form is the part we recognize and call a map. Map artifacts are matter, the thing's physical embodiment, its cartographic style, the technicalities of craft, the accoutrements of instrumentality, the handling of data, all that stuff. The matter of the artifact contributes to both mapicity and to persuasiveness, but matter is not the map. Dividing the whatness from the thingness is key. In the past, I've talked about dividing theory and craft, and these terms describe how we deal with form and matter. Craft is how we make things and how we instantiate the signals of mapicity, while theory shows us what it is we need to make to get people to see the signals as signals and as signals of what we want signaled. What then about conceptual art? Why is it instructive to examine this working model? Conceptual art questions the nature of art and centralizes the examination of its own nature. Sol LeWitt wrote that in conceptual art, the idea or concept is the most important aspect of the work. When an artist uses a conceptual form of art, it means that all the planning and decisions are made beforehand, and the execution is a perfunctory affair. The idea becomes a machine that makes the art. It is important, however, that one not confuse concept with intention. The intention is irrelevant to the conception. With a map, the concept concerns what it is to be a map, while the intention is just the business case for having taken on the job. This difference can be illustrated by comparing the singing performances turned in by Yoko Ono. On the one hand, by the traditional Japanese folk song Sakura, and on the other, the screaming for which she's notorious. In the first, we have an intentional exhibition of high craft, and in the second, an intentional demonstration of high concept. The intentions, in either case, only provided opportunities. Thus, we see that we can create a clear and useful intellectual division, not only between form and matter, but between concept, intention, and craft. In any map, as in any artwork, this division allows us to examine, explore, and come to an understanding of the work's elemental components and of its whole. In practice, of course, these three elements are inextricably intertwined. No one or two of them can exist without the others, and none can be severed from the others except in thought. The idea or concept of a map, what a map is, its whatness, is instantiated by its craft embodiment, its howness, and is invoked by a map's business intention, its whyness. And yet it exists as a single map. In the transfigured map, each element feeds directly into the center of the other. In addition, each map is judged independently by each potential user, and each potential user brings their own criteria to bear in making their own decisions on the mapness of the artifact. Yet, yes, each individual is constrained by culturally promulgated conventions, but each one of us compiles and understands that motley, that medley of conventions to suit ourselves. We each make our own map out of your artifact. To recapitulate, a map only becomes a map by the transfiguration perpetrated upon an artifact by a map reader. It is the bringing of meaning to the object that transfigures it. Until and unless that transfiguration takes place, the artifact is not a map. Only the evaluative division of the map into form, matter, and intention, a division that can take place only conceptually, allows us to examine the concept, the artifact, the transfiguration, as well as the resulting map. Such an evaluative division lies at the heart of conceptual art, and it is likewise the core of a true conceptual theory of cartography. Throughout this talk, I've focused on the role of the individual map reader in performing the transfiguration. However, I am not saying that meaning is an individual creation. It is instead the result of individuals applying to the map text artifact a selection of cultural operations and conventions that collectively constitute the communal institution of cartography. Using the model I propose allows us to deal with unfixed readings and to see that unfixed readings do not destabilize the map. In fact, quite the opposite. Thank you very much. And that is the end.
Mark, that was a great and thought-provoking talk. I will just, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put it into our Slack channel. I'll just note some of the praise for your talk, Mark. Meaning-bearing things that we call maps. Molly notes that this is an excellent phrase, and we did not know that you were previously a boat builder, Mark.
No, I did talk about that once a couple of years ago, but maybe they missed that one.
Well, I think this is the first time that I've heard your talk, so I did not know that. And Dylan notes that he will forever mentally picture map readers as small wizards due to this talk.
Oh, that they are performing this transfiguration, and that's really central to the whole activity. That you can only make this thing that someone will choose to turn into something that they can then read into, and perhaps if you're lucky and if you're good at it, they'll read in there what you wanted them to read. For a long time, I've always said that the way that you can tell if your map works is if you show it to somebody and then they explain to you what you've been trying to get them to think, because they are convinced that they have discovered that in this map, and to a large extent they actually have discovered it, and that way you've done your job. Then that's the evidence.
That's a really good point, and I think that there's some, in that sense, there's some parallel between what map makers do and kind of what these conceptual artists like Sol LeWitt or Yoko Ono do in terms of intentionality.
Oh, it very much so. Yeah, I think there is a clear coordination there, and certainly again, if you don't know that much about me, I did my Master of Fine Art degree and my Bachelor of Fine Art degree 20 years before that at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, which was in the 70s when I was first there, the place where you went to learn about conceptual art. I've got a hardcore training in that, so I can recognize those parallels, and I think that it would help a lot of us if we can learn to leverage those.
Great.